Good evening and welcome to
Wake up.
Wake up.
Wake Up. Yes, Lord? Okay. Good evening, and we're going to walk and talk our way through chapter 12, 13, and maybe 14. We'll see how quick we get to go.
Yes.
But before we start, a couple of commercials. Don't forget your Wake Up coffee cup. Thank you. Become a partner with us.
It was in the dishwasher.
That's right.
It was being used.
You might need two cups because, as he said, his was in the dishwasher. Okay? But by simply sending us a little donation, and I don't care if it's $1 or $5, we just want to know who our partners are. So if you would, slip $1 into our, what do you call it? Our donation box thing. Don't forget to put the CV code as well as your hard address so we can mail it to you. And also along commercials, let me go ahead and tell you that I'm looking for miracles.
Miracles.
Oh, together. Oh, Rabbi Rittenhouse, you're a little slow this morning. Evening. Okay.
Wake up.
But I am looking for miracles, 2-minute miracles. And what I'd like to do is take your phone, okay, and go to your camera and video a 2-minute testimony. Give only your first name, no phone numbers, no addresses, only your first name, and tell us what the Lord's done in your life. We would like to use these in order to encourage people. And don't send it if you're not prepared for us to make it public. Okay? And if you are going to send it, make it look good. So anyway.
Fair point.
Okay, that's our commercial.
Fair point.
But last week we kind of had a point of discussion in which Casey was presenting a new horse in the race.
A new horse in the race. I mean, we've heard Moses and Elijah as far as being the two witnesses in Revelations 11, and Enoch and Elijah as far as being the two witnesses. But the idea had come across my attention span of the saints being the two witnesses. And really to tackle this, I'll bring out 2 points. The beast that's mentioned in Revelations 11, verse 7, it says, And when they being the two witnesses, have finished their testimony, right, 3.5 years, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them. Well, we can look and see throughout Daniel chapter 7, verses 21 and 22, and also Revelations 13 and 17, the beast makes war with the saints, plural. Now, this is just a horse in the race. Yes.
Doesn't it always make war with us?
Always.
Always, okay. Continue.
Okay. And so this concept of the two witnesses being being plural, like more than just two individuals, it was kind of testing. So to further this testing, in Revelations chapter 17, it talks about the woman who sits on the beast, right? The woman clothed in scarlet. And in verse 6, so chapter 17, verse 6, it says, And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And the Greek word there for martyrs is Greek number 3144, and I'm not even going to pronounce it.
Okay, and that's in the Strong's Concordance.
That's Strong's Concordance, yes.
3144?
Correct. And 29 times is the majority used. It's used 29 times as witness more than it is martyr. Martyr is used only 3 times, and 2 times only as record.
The Greek word is martus.
Martus. Oh, that was easy. Okay.
I had a Greek lesson.
Okay.
Here and there.
But the majority use of this word is witness. So the woman who rides the beast is drunken with the blood of the saints and the witnesses. Right? So this brought me back, of course, to Zechariah chapter 4. And Zechariah chapter 4 only ever mentions the 2 anointed ones being the 2 olive trees. That's all it's given, right? There's only 1 menorah, and Revelations 11 mentions 2 menorahs. So here's where the thought can be tested is in these two menorahs or two candlesticks in Revelations 11. The thought goes back to the direction of definition. Is Revelations referring to the definition in Zechariah, or is Zechariah giving us something to look forward to?
A prelude.
Correct, in Revelations. So, like, essentially, Zechariah only gave us half the definition, whereas Revelations gave us the complete definition, i.e., both the two olive trees and the two candlesticks. So, do you have a question?
Who are the two or the candlesticks in Zechariah?
The two candlesticks are not mentioned in Zechariah.
I think they are. It's Zerubbabel and Yeshua.
Ah.
Not Yeshua meaning Joshua.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as mentioning candlesticks, it's not mentioned. There's one candlestick in Zechariah 4, but not two. And so Revelation says there's two candlesticks like the two olive trees. Still tracking so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, in this thought, because the direction of definition is Zechariah is pointing to Revelations, not Revelations pointing to Zechariah for the definition, they use the term of candlesticks to refer to the seven churches back in Revelations chapter 1. Chapter 1, verse 20 of Revelations mentions the mystery of the seven stars which you saw in my right hand and the seven golden candlesticks. The seven stars are the angels of the seven churches, and the seven candlesticks which thou sawest are the seven churches. Interesting side note, if I may. David Stern, in his commentary of the Jewish New Testament, comments on this specific verse and says, the seven menorahs are the seven messianic communities of verse 11, with Yeshua's warning to the community of Ephesus, quote, I will remove your menorah from its place unless you turn from your sin. It says, compare his remark to the Sermon on the Mount that believers are light for the world. Matthew 5:15 through 16. And in this concept, when you look at the seven churches, right, the seven menorahs, there are only two of them, two churches, that don't receive a bad report. The church of Smyrna and the church of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And it's this concept that the two churches here are the two witnesses, defined in Revelations 11. Now, you might ask, well, what does that mean? And to finish this train of thought, as far as the importance of the witnesses being the saints, is for 3.5 years they give testimony, right? And then the beast rises up and makes war with them. At that same time, the Antichrist comes and reigns for 3.5 years. Well, it just so happens in Revelations 11 that their bodies, the bodies of the two witnesses, are dead for 3.5 days. The concept stretches a little further to include days could also represent years. Possibly, right? It's something out there to chew on, to look at, to meditate and pray on. And we find this concept of days equaling years in Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel chapter 4, verses 4 through 6, where for a certain number of days Ezekiel had to lay on his side for the house of Israel, and a certain number of days he had to lie on his other side for the house of Judah, right, to represent the years of iniquity. So the concept is there. The question is, does it apply here? Remains. Because if it does remain, you have 3.5 years of testimony from the saints, and then you have 3.5 years of persecution, death, destruction of the saints by the beast, which has power to do so, and their bodies remain in the streets for that period of time. But 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7 years. So whether or not that's accurate, it's just a horse in the race. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Let's look at this text in Zechariah. And they talk, of course, about the two olive trees. Mm-hmm. And this is from 4, starting in verse 11. Then Esther said to him, what are these two olive trees at the right of the lampstand and at the left? And I further answered and said to him, what are these 2 olive branches that drip into the receptacles of the 2 gold pipes which the golden oil drains? And he answered me and said, do you not know what these are? And I said, no, my Lord. Capital. Nope, small l. Okay. And he said, these are the 2 anointed ones who stand beside the Lord on the whole earth,
Yes.
of the whole earth. And there it would seem to me to imply 2 individuals. But we have this concept about could it be Elijah and could it be Enoch and could it be Moses and Elijah? Well, understand that we're speculating.
Yes.
And all this is speculation. And it's the church's speculation that it's Elijah and Enoch because these 2 never died, or it's Elijah and Moses, one representing the law, the other representing the Torah, and another one saying, oh no, it's got to be Elijah because of the miracles, and Moses because he's Moses, I guess.
Right.
Okay. But no matter how we look at it, until it becomes history, it's only speculation.
True. And, Yeshua does answer something similar to this type of question as far as standing on the left and right in Matthew chapter 20, which I read to you guys earlier, but I'll start in verse 22. This is talking about the mother of Zebedee's children with her sons, right, went to ask Yeshua a question. That question of, can my son stand at your side, right? And he responds to her and says, you know not what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I shall drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with, right? He said unto them, you shall drink indeed of my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with, but to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared of my Father. So Yeshua had some idea.
But he couldn't name names.
Correct.
It's interesting. We assume it's someone biblically famous. It might be 2 people we never knew, but whose personal lives so affected the world around us. But I do think we have a question at this point.
Okay, the question is one day as 1,000 years to God?
Well, you want to go ahead and answer?
Well, I mean, if we look at how they in Exodus 20, it talks about the Sabbath, right? For 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day you shall rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are those literal days?
Some think so.
So
and
would
some
that
argue
also
they're not.
would that not also apply with the days of creation? Because I'm speculating that that's the 1,000 years equal a day is also applied to the days of creation. But if we do that, then how do we keep ourselves with?
Yes, but the number 7, I mean, if we don't have to take it hyper literally, the number 7 that he rested on the 7th day. Okay, yes, and I believe that is the case. However, we find that there's a series of 7s. There's a sabbatical year, so you rest every 7th year. Every 7 times 7, you come to the year of Jubilee. So you find that series of 7s over and over again. So I don't think you have to hold tightly to that interpretation. Does that make sense?
Well, true. I mean, even the Talmud talks about the 7,000 years. 2,000 years without the law, and 2,000 years with the law, and then 2,000 years
Messianic.
with Messianic, and then you have the sabbatical.
Now, I think your original question was, are the principles the same 1,000 years as a day is 1,000 years?
Okay.
I believe the reality is that it's a statement that says time doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay, what God can do today might take 1,000 years for something else to take place, or for someone else to do it. But I'm not sure we can exchange literal times, because when we read in Genesis, He set the sun and the moon and stars in their place for seasons and for days. Okay, so can God go from a single 24-hour day, all those cycles, up to 1,000 years, and cycle back to one day?
Well, I mean, okay, so
Or is it just endless in time?
when God warned Adam right? For in the day, don't eat of the tree of good and evil, for in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die, right? In the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Adam got close to 1,000 years. In that concept, he still died within the day.
Sure, and that's
In-
just because the Hebrew yom for
Yes.
day can also mean ages, like a geological age.
Right.
Or, when I speak of, the day of Moses, well, that means the time that Moses lived. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a literal day. The way we use the term day is similar to how the Hebrew term yom is used. It can mean a literal 24-hour day, but it can also mean a specified period of time.
Right.
Now, in reference to the 7 days of creation, we have no reason to assume it's not 7 literal.
Yeah.
And yet mathematically, through a system of log mathematics, you can show how here is a day, but by looking back over a span of time, a day really did make the waves or in existence that to mankind appears to be 1,000 years.
That's a valid point because, and
That's only math.
I don't want to go down this path too far, but we measure time because time is relative to us. It's part of creation. We measure time based on 24 hours. Okay, the amount of time it takes for the Earth to rotate, right?
Yes.
So, if the Earth rotated slower, who's to say the Earth didn't rotate slower at a certain point in time? Then
NASA.
it would still be a day. It'd still be a day, but it may be a lot longer than what we're used to because
No, we
Time
know
moves
we know
slower.
that to be true, because we take the third watch in a day. The third watch, according to my wristwatch, okay, in the winter might be, 8 o'clock in the morning. But according to my wristwatch, the third hour of the day in July might be 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock because we're measuring daylight. And when we think about measuring time, that's a benefit for man. But the idea that in that day you shall surely die, okay? I think man died in that day because he lost that connection with God. When God breathed the man the breath of life, Yeshua has to come back along, in my opinion, 4,000 years later and receive you the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So, is dead the same for me as it is for God? Because my body ceases to exist? Does my spirit live? And is dead being cut off from the Lord? Because when Revelation we talk about, which we'll get to eventually, about the second death. Okay?
Yes.
First death and second death. But anyway, so anything else you'd like to add?
Honestly,
to
the
follow-up?
conclusion is the saints should most likely be involved or be prepared to be involved with the two witnesses in some form or fashion.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, prepare to be a witness, martyr, witness. Okay. By the way, I checked up the definition of martyr. Did you read it in English?
Only what was on the computer,
Okay.
Blue Letter Bible app.
A martyr is a person who's willing to go that far.
Willing to go the distance,
willing to
complete
go
the
the
race, run the race.
if that's what it takes to win the race.
Right.
Okay. And I believe quite sincerely that the two witnesses will probably be the charge of the witnesses, the martyrs.
That's a fair statement because if the beast is going to go make war with the saints, then that means the saints are on the other side, retaliating, not being cowards or hiding, right? So that makes sense.
Now, there are other opinions, like the two candlesticks. One says it's the church, and it says it's Israel.
Right.
Okay. There's all sorts of presuppositions.
And we won't know until we get there.
Right. And the thing about a presupposition, you create a line of thought that may sound great and still be erroneous. You don't know until it becomes history.
Which is why it's nice to watch the horse race
Yeah.
with a lot of tickets on different horses.
Okay. But we're going to go ahead and start looking tonight at chapter 12. Am I correct, Rabbi Rittenhouse?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to start us off?
Sure.
Because I got a horse for this race.
And I'm going to start off focusing just on the first few verses, and because what I believe is happening here is that what we find is with the opening or the sounding of the sixth trumpet, we know there's a seventh trumpet that is to come, but it hasn't officially been blown yet. Within the seventh trumpet, we find the seven bowls, but there's a pause in the action. There seems to be a pause in the action. So the narrative isn't necessarily advancing chronologically, but it's giving additional information. And we'll find that additional information in other places throughout the scriptures because it's not necessarily new here. It's just we're given additional information in Revelation to add to what's already been revealed. So let me read to you just the first couple of verses in chapter 12. It says, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with sun, with the moon under her feet, and her head a crown of 12 stars. She is pregnant, crying out in birth pains and agony to give birth. Now, I want to stop here to just ask simply the question, what does it mean that there's a sign in heaven? What does it mean, a sign in heaven?
Could it literally just be the stars? The constellations?
I think that's kind of what it means.
Well, at the same time, let's not forget that's how they saw Yeshua coming.
Exactly.
A great sign was seen in the heavens. Okay?
Exactly. And that's kind of that's exactly what I was alluding here.
So did I get the star
You
and the points?
you get a star. It's an astronomical event, okay? A
Astrological event?
Astrological. Yes.
That one. That.
Thank you. It's, excuse me. I believe that it was the star that appeared, the sages that came from probably Babylon had come and who were looking for the king. Unfortunately, they showed up at Herod's doorstep. I believe what we are seeing here is a prophecy, a telling in the spiritual realm what is happening in the earthly realm. So just as everything that we see here that happened on earth with the birth of Yeshua, the slaughter of the innocents at the hand of Herod, the catching away of Yeshua into heaven and sitting at the right hand of the Father, the persecution of the believers, there is a spiritual side of that as well, because the physical is manifesting itself as a sort of side effect of the spiritual. In other words, there's a spiritual battle in heaven that's manifesting on earth. And that's what's being described here, is that there's a spiritual battle in heaven and it's poured out upon the earth. The enemy knows his time is short. The dragon knows his time is short, so he tries to take out the Messiah. He's tried to take out the Messiah from the beginning of creation, right? And what's the easiest way to do that? Goes after the children of Israel, because if he can wipe out the children of Israel, he can wipe out the Messiah. But he can't do that.
Can I stop you for a second?
Absolutely, please.
You keep saying the spiritual.
Yes.
Well, if I understand Hebrews, it says everything we see and understand is only a shadow of reality.
Absolutely,
Okay?
yes.
This is not reality. It might feel like real.
It's only a fragment of
a
reality.
fragment. Okay, and no eyes seen, no ears. I mean, you think about the glory of heaven, and we wait in awe, because that's reality. This is only a shadow. And,
Absolutely.
People don't know my spiritual warfare. Really, we talked about this earlier. Spiritual warfare is warfare, and it's not hopping and jumping around and waving flags and such. Spiritual warfare is getting out there just like the two witnesses, just like the saints, putting it on the line for the Lord. Every time you give a testimony, every time you pray for someone, every time you visit the sick or go to the hospital or whatever. Okay, that's spiritual warfare, not hopping. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Shabbat is not spiritual warfare. No, this is where we come to get recharged, recoup, okay? To get
Charging station.
Yeah, It's our charging station. So if you're singing and dancing, good. Charge yourself up. And then on Monday or Sunday, go out there and use that energy. Okay? But my whole point in interrupting you was to point out that you're talking about is the reality. This is only a shadow of things.
Absolutely.
So forgive me if I get preachy.
No, not at all.
Okay, I'll keep preaching.
Absolutely.
To get preachy, can I take up an offering?
Yes, absolutely.
Another commercial?
We'll have to do that online, but yeah.
All right.
So what we find is that the woman who I believe clearly represents Israel, the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, is crowned with 12 stars. Now, there's speculation what those 12 stars are. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. It's crowned with 12 stars, and I believe those 12 stars represent, however you look at it, they could represent the 12 apostles. They could represent the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. As a whole, it represents, I believe, ultimately the faithful covenant members of God, represented through the 12 sons of Jacob, the faithful covenant members. And it says that the mother is about to give birth, or this woman is about to give birth to a child. And then it talks about birth pains. Now, here's where things get interesting. Okay, it talks about birth pains. Of course, we know what birth pains mean.
I don't. I've heard about it.
I've heard too.
I've heard from outside the delivery room.
I've not even heard about it.
Your turn.
Both of my wife's childbirths were cesarean. So
Both of your wives?
both of my one wife's child.
Don't get him in trouble.
Okay.
So, not to say that wasn't painful. So, sorry, Lori, I didn't mean to minimize that. Anyways,
Birth
we
pains.
know that a mother who's about to give birth, the closer she comes to birth, the more intense the birth pains come, right? So we find this image of this woman who is Israel, is about to give birth to a son who is the Messiah, who is Yeshua. And then it says in verse 3, then another sign appeared in heaven, a great fiery red dragon that has 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 royal crowns on his head. His tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven. It hurled them to the earth. And now the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that whenever she gave birth, he might devour her child. Now, there's a couple of things to point out here. One is that if you go to Isaiah 66:7, this is, I believe, speaking of the same event. It says, the sound of uproar. Wait a minute, verse 7. Before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came, she delivered a male child. So it talks about birth pains, but it talks about it in reverse. So before her birth pains started, she gave birth, and then the birth pains happened, which is the exact opposite of what we would naturally think. So something supernatural is going on here. The mother gives birth and then experiences birth pains. This, I believe, clearly speaks of Yeshua, because what happens, as Yeshua prophesied exactly 40 years after his ascension into heaven, the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, the sack of Jerusalem by Rome, for how long? For 3.5 years. It was 3.5 years, and that was prophesied also in Revelation that it would occur for 3.5 years. That when the dragon realized that he couldn't take out Israel, he couldn't take the Messiah was taken away, then he turns his attention to the Messiah's brethren, if you would, those who belong to him, those who were his faithful. And of course, Yeshua told them, he said, when you see the abomination of the desolation that takes place, flee.
Yes.
Let me offer a suggestion.
Absolutely.
Could you read your Isaiah text again?
Yes. Before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came, she delivered a male child.
Okay. So the birth pains are after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it still deals with Yeshua. Okay. Mary brought forth the child. Okay. She did her time of purification. They took him to the temple where Simeon and Anna see him. But the pain started after, when the wise men showed up and informed Herod. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
So for the first couple of years, it's kind of nice, and then death and pain starts. We have a question back here.
Could the birth pains mean that she grieves
Doesn't the prophet say that Israel will mourn as Rachel mourns for hers?
So the question is, could it mean that the mother grieves? And that was your response. Oh, the birth is what she grieves.
The consequences of the birth.
Consequence. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say yes to all that. I believe part of it certainly is a grieving process. In fact, in Genesis, when it says that your pain in childbirth will greatly increase, if you look at the Hebrew, it could just as easily translate as your sorrow or your grief in childbirth will greatly increase as well.
Well, if we look at the history of Israel being born as a nation, what did it cost them?
6 million Jews.
6 million. But once it came, okay, the birth pains didn't go away, did they?
No.
Okay, it became a nation. And then
Immediately.
48 hours later, in a war, the very first war. Okay?
Absolutely.
And it's always that way. It's always that way. You know? And so it's amazing when we stop and we think of this text being both past, present, and future. Okay? Is there yet another great birth pain coming? The child's already here. Okay? And would the pain after the fact refer to this time of tribulation?
I believe so. I certainly believe so because we are told that the pain of child, that we are to look out for those increasing birth pains because we know when the Messiah returns, it will be like a mother about to give birth.
And we know the parable of the fig tree. When it's in season, when it's about to, I forget it. I know where it's at though.
Okay, you find it. Okay.
And can I add something here? We were referencing Isaiah 66, and I said, this is clearly speaking of Yeshua, and I believe that's the case. But I believe there's a multiple fulfillment. Just as we spoke of, was it last week or the week before, how Yeshua represents Israel as a whole. Because in Isaiah 66, the Peshat, or the black and white of the text, is talking about Israel being born in a day. Okay?
A day or 1,000 years is a day. But history shows it really was one day.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then the birth pains happened right after that. Right?
Absolutely.
And so it is with Yeshua. I believe that John is receiving this vision, and it's type of a type of midrash revelation where there's not just one fulfillment, there's multiple fulfillments. That just as the nation of Israel was born 1948, and there was a birth pains right after that, so it is Yeshua was also born and was taken away into heaven, and the birth pains occurred right after that, including whether it be sorrow, whether it be the slaughter of the innocents, or the destruction of the temple and the incredible amount of persecution that occurred at that time.
So would you say the parable of the fig tree applies here? Because it says in Matthew 24:32, learn the parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when when you shall see all these things, know that that it is near, even at the doors.
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen 1948? Did the leaves begin to sprout on the fig tree, if you will?
In a positive manner, yes. Okay? Even under the harsh circumstances, Israel has prospered. First time I went to Israel was in 96, 97.
Not that long ago. Okay.
Okay, 1996, 1997. Okay. And it was very modernized and such, but much of it still, bottom line, was kind of primitive still. And the last time I went back, it's a garden. It really is. It's actually blossoming, as the scripture said, as a garden in the wilderness. It's just popping up, and it's so modernized. It hasn't lost its old world charm, mind you. But yeah, those leaves came out.
So then we're just that much closer to the end times.
Mm-hmm. Can I give you my insight on chapter 12?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. See, I recognize, like you, that the woman and the stars, okay, this most likely is Israel, because it goes all the way back to Genesis, okay? And the stars are the sons, or maybe the tribes of Israel. But it doesn't stop there, because here we got the woman fully mature, all the sons are there, the tribes are there, and now she brings forth a son, a single son, who we're going to call the Messiah, HaMashiach. Not a Messiah, the Messiah. Okay? And she makes war, no, Satan makes war with her, seeking to devour that child. Just as Herod, who is now our Gomez, he's going to be our Satan here, tries to devour Yeshua. And if we continue along this timeline, we find that he was unsuccessful with devouring the child, who was caught up to God, as the scripture says Yeshua was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on, and this is where the saint thing comes in. Okay. What happens? He goes and makes war with the rest of her children. And then it describes those children here at the very end of chapter 12. And the dragon was enraged with the woman and went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments, the Torah of God, and have the testimony of Yeshua, the Messiah. Now, there are those who are going to say, no, this is strictly the Jewish saints, it's the Jewish Christians. Well, it doesn't say that exactly. But to make war with the rest of her children who had the commandments of God and bear the testimony of Yeshua. That includes all the adopted children. It includes what I'm going to call in Ephesians chapter 2, the Commonwealth of Israel. And so for our friends who keep the Torah and bear the name of Yeshua and give testimony and live in grace under the commandments, that's who it's talking about. And it sounds great. However, the very same phrase is found in 14:12.
14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus.
Now, this particular text, when we get to chapter 14, is about some martyrdom and some believers giving up the ghost. And I do believe that the two witnesses are the heads, the leaders of the Messianic movement at that time, in that place. And because they're the heads, like the old adages about war, you kill the head and the body dies.
Right.
So they killed the heads, and the body didn't die. In fact, they didn't die either. 3.5 days, they're up. And so as I look at this, I see this as a prophecy that's past, present, future. It's a prophecy that always is. Maybe expanding, growing. Maybe we're seeing what I refer to as progressive holiness or progressive revelation. Okay? But it's clearly none other than Yeshua and none other than the saints, the Commonwealth, those who hold. Let me just be blunt. Okay?
Please go ahead.
Okay. If you're not a disciple, you might not be numbered among these. And a disciple has, first of all, a teacher. And they follow the teacher, the instructions of the elders. And so it's absolutely essential that we realize that in the last days, there's a great, and as Yeshua says, there's a great separation. There is, what's the term found in the scripture? The great falling away. Okay? You're gonna
Of
do
the
a-
saints.
Yeah, of the saints. Going to be a little sifting here. And these are the ones who hold true. Okay? Both in 12 and 14.
What was that passage about to the believers, he said? In
Oh,
John
John 8:31.
8:31.
Might be 41. 8:31.
8:31. Then Yeshua said to those Jews who believed on him, "If you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed."
If I don't continue in his word, I can still believe and not be a disciple.
Right.
Ooh.
That's
I
pretty
don't
heavy.
know what to say at that point. Other than fact, if you've got a question or a comment that you'd like to share with us, please put it in the box, or the box, of course, being the comment box, or you can always text it to 719-248-6324.
If I could add to what you were
I'm going
saying.
to drink from my cup.
Wake up, cup. Wake up, cup.
Wake up and Torah moments.
There was something here, and I want to say I agree with what you were saying. There's something here I wanted to point out as well. And in verse 13, we're still in chapter 12. Now, when the dragon saw that he had been thrown to earth, he stalked the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman who had given birth to the male child, which is clearly Israel. But the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle so that she may fly away from the presence of the serpent into the wilderness to the place where she is taken care of for a time, times and a half a time.
3.5 years.
Yes, which is what happened when Jerusalem was sacked. When Jerusalem was sacked for 3.5 years, when it was being attacked by Rome, the Jewish believers saw that as a sign. And they fled to the east side of Jordan, to the city of Pella, and they waited there for 3.5 years until the sack of Jerusalem ended, and then they came back. That's where we come up with where you were talking about here in verse 17. So the dragon became enraged as the women went off to make war with the rest of the offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Yeshua. So here in Jerusalem, we find that there were those who were preserved. They heard the words of Yeshua. They fled, and they were preserved for 3.5 years. The dragon, the Satan, was angry, so he turned his attention to the rest, which explains also, the whole origin of the book of Revelation. And what we're talking about here is an encouragement to stand strong, to stay faithful, as the Emperor Domitian is pouring out his wrath upon believers of Messiah, and followers, not just believers, but followers, those who are faithful to his words, those who believe and are faithful to his words. Stay strong, because God has already predicted that this has happened. And this has happened to you because the enemy is angry with you. One of the things that stuck out to me, we were kind of talking about this, is that it doesn't just say, and boy, I'm going to be careful how I mention this because I don't want to step on any toes, but it doesn't just say. It doesn't just say that it is those who believed on him. It says that those who believed and were faithful, those who believed and followed his word. In other words, you can believe, great. Are you much of a threat to the enemy? You're a threat to the enemy if you believe and you are faithful to his word. That's why he turns his attention to you. So even today, when you believe and you are faithful to his word, expect the enemy to come at you. Expect the enemy to throw all sorts of weapons in your way. If you are experiencing spiritual attack, rest assured you're not alone, and it's to be expected, but the battle's already won.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong.
That's correct.
This means you're going to have to stand and prove.
Right.
Yeah, when I think about standing and proving, you're right. The moment we attempt to enter into a full biblical life, whatever area we're trying to enter into, that's where we're attacked. For a prime example, the moment you try to enter into fellowship with others, your old friends are not going to be so happy with you.
Right.
That's right.
Okay?
You changed.
You change. Or let's say you want to start tithing, for an example. Bam, I guarantee you, the moment you start tithing, you're going to look at your budget going, oh, I don't have enough money to go to Sturgis this year.
Right.
But that's got to be part of the cost of being a disciple. And, if you look at people's diets, if I'm going to really follow Yeshua, no more pepperoni. I'm not saying that those who eat pepperoni are going to hell, but no, let's face facts that there are some dietary restrictions. And food is only what God calls food, not what the grocery calls food.
Right.
Okay.
I wanted to look at the wings of the eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Of the
American
eagle.
Airlines.
That was given to the woman. I don't know if it was a plane, but maybe. Where did they come from? And this is the new thought, so bear with me. I'm trying to get y'all's
Where
thoughts.
do they come from?
Where do the eagle's wings come from?
I mean, do they actually sprout real wings?
Well, because I say this leading into chapter 13, because in chapter 13 it shows us 4 beasts, or the beasts that are mentioned in Daniel. The only thing that's not the same are the eagle's wings. In Daniel chapter 7, right, the 4 great beasts, verse 3, came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first one was a lion, right, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. If these beasts represent kingdoms, what were the wings? And if they were plucked off here, were these the same ones given to the woman to go find a place of sanctuary?
So I think the guy goes, pluck.
And then the woman was like given, like essentially, the Israel was given a place of safety,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Like, what was in history? Is there a certain specific point that would represent the eagle's wings that the woman could find safety?
I think,
It's just a thought.
I think maybe you're on something. Idea, what do the wings historically, systematically represent to the scriptures? For you shall mount upon wings as eagles, you shall run not be weary, you shall walk and not faint.
Right.
But last time I checked, I am not having any wings, and you're looking at a little.
I am no angel.
And so, historically, what is the representation of the wings?
Well, prophetically, sometimes an eagle represents God as he spreads out his wings as a cover and a protection for his young. I mean, that's the inspiration behind this song. But beneath my, wait a minute, that's a Bette Midler song. The wind beneath my wings. That's not what I meant. I will dwell in the shadow of your wings.
I should dwell in the shadow. of your
Yes.
wings. Okay.
That God spreads out his wings. And it brings us back to the whole idea of Passover. Because Pesach, we traditionally refer to it as Passover. But it can also mean to hover. Not just to pass over, but to hover. You know, the same imagery as a wing, an eagle's wings to hover over to protect her young. So the angel of death is not just passing over, but he's hovering over and protecting the children of Israel.
The angel of death?
No, well, the angel of death is God. If you read the text, because you'll find out that it says tetragrammaton.
Ooh, you learn something every day.
Okay, but now the swing thing, we have the image also in the New Covenant, in the Gospel. Yeshua says, "Oh, I would gather you as a hen gathers her little ones."
Yes.
But, you know, it's that moment when it talks about gathering the little ones as a hen would under the divine protection of her wings. No. At that moment, everything changed because the people did not. And I'm going to tell you exactly the moment in history it changed. You want to take a guess? When the Sanhedrin stands before Pilate and Ananias and Barabbas and Yeshua, and they call out to Pilate, "We have no king but Caesar." It broke. It was broken. And I think that's the very moment it's discussing when it says, "Oh, I would have gathered you as the hen gathers her chicks."
Right.
Okay. Because how many times do we read in our morning prayers, okay, that God is our king? Over and over and over and over, God is our king. And then to declare we have no king but Caesar.
Yeah, that brings something else to mind too, because you know this is a famous verse to quote that the church oftentimes uses, right? You know, Yeshua's last trip into Jerusalem, he looks over the city. "You will not see me again, Jerusalem, until you say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord."
No longer.
Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
But how many of us have thought about that? We're waiting for the Lord's return, and yet the Lord clearly says here, "Jerusalem, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord."
Is that just
If we're
one
waiting
verse?
for him to return, we might want to step our ministry to the Jewish people.
How many people have to say that in order for it to be fulfilled? You think?
144,000.
I like that. That's a good guess.
I find it interesting. He has 144,000, which is the remnant of Israel. And they're taken out of the way. And then he contends with those who contend with the body of the of believers. In other words, he sees those who are martyred and those who are witnesses. He sees the work of the Antichrist against the believer. And God reacts to that beast, that Satan, on behalf of the whole of the body. You know, I kind of think of a remnant as a bag of seed taken, set over in the corner, so I got next year's harvest. And then we concentrate on the harvest itself. And so he supplies us with signs and wonders. He supplies us with two witnesses. He supplies to us, example after example, and grace after grace. You know, it's not as simple as it appears.
Yep.
It never is. Because remember, when we often tell these stories, we tell it in its simplest form, which is pseudo fairy tale. Okay? You know, the whole birth of Yeshua, I'd like to go to one Christmas event, one pageant, where all the kids come out wearing their towels on their heads and their robes and such.
Yes.
And at the very end, they slaughter a bunch of babies. I really don't. I don't want to see that. But that's the whole truth of the story. Rachel weeping for her children who are no more. Okay? Here, Rachel weeping for her children who are no more. Okay? And if my theology, by chance, should be correct, okay, the children is the whole of the Commonwealth of Israel. You know, we often talked about those who went to the Colosseum in Rome, you know, the great persecution under Nero. There were more converts, more Gentile believers than Jewish believers in the Colosseum. Okay? And they paid the price for being part of the Commonwealth of Israel.
It is said, not to be graphic, it is said that Nero was so cruel with the Christians that he even lit them on fire and used them to light the games.
Oh, and actually, it's told how we dip them in wax and turn them into living candles. So anyway.
Such faith.
But we still got a few minutes left. If you've got a comment or a question, please send it in. And I don't think we're getting out of chapter 12. So next week, we'll have to look at 13 and 14. And you'll have a chance to tell us all about the images of the beast and the representation of these symbols. By the way, quick lesson on symbols. Once God gives a symbol, he never changes the definition. Do you know that? Never. Okay? And so when we talk about the birds of the air, those are angelic. Some are fallen angelic, but they're angelic. Okay? When we talk about the four horsemen, as we did a few weeks ago, okay, those symbols didn't change. They stayed the same, no matter where we find them in Scripture. So,
The stars,
yeah.
the stars are always speaking of angels.
So, you have anything else you'd like to bring to us, Mr. Casey?
I'm just thinking about the symbols and their original meanings when they're continually used. Does that continual use further bring out its original meaning? Like, I guess what I mean is, was there always more to it, and it's just slowly being revealed?
You ever been to the eye doctor?
Only once or twice, but I don't see him often.
Remember, he takes the, is this better? Is this better?
Better number one, better number two.
Was that planned or that just happened? 'Cause
That just happened.
that was pretty good. Okay, I'll give that to you.
And the thing is, with each new insight, it only improves the vision. This one, this one. And I think when we look at progressive revelation, we cannot forget the base of the revelation and each step of progression.
Progression. Always progression.
Yes, I don't like the term evolution, but we are evolving. Okay. Any questions out there? Any comments? I see heads going like this.
So I was thinking about what you were talking about with Israel. You know, Israel is a nation, and we know that as non-Jews become believers and followers of Yeshua, they become grafted into Israel, so they become a part of that promise, but they never replace Israel, who is the original manifestation of that promise.
Correct.
That's true. Now, if I take the Jewish people from the time of Yeshua, and I look at the Jewish people today, we have so many different flavors. Okay, we have Ethiopians, we have Yemenites, we have Ashkenaz, we got Sephardi's, we got Bakus, okay, and we come in every flavor under the sun. And we wouldn't have those flavors if God didn't join to us those from the nations. But they joined us. We are the assimilators, not the assimilatees.
Right. Otherwise, what would be left?
And I think it's by God blinded the eyes of Israel for such a long time, so they would not be assimilated.
That's a good point. And I also think in connection to the study of Revelation, as we're reading about Revelation, and of course, it includes the attacks and the persecution of non-Jewish believers. But we can never lose sight of the fact that Israel is at the heart of this. If you don't see Israel in eschatology, your eschatology is going to be off. You are not looking with good bifocals.
Good. Bifocals. Okay.
Better number one, better number two.
Oh, well, I think we come to the end of our program. And so, Mr. Casey, you want to close out our little session of prayer? Oh, by the way, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, follow button, share button, and the donate button. All right?
If you get time, the like button helps too.
Yeah. Lots. Okay.
Lord God, our Father, our King, we just come before you and just we look for revelation. Father, as we read Revelation, a book of information, Father, that we have yet to understand. We ask for understanding and comprehension of what it all means. Father, how it plays out, what we are expected of, what's expected of us. Father, and just the maintenance of our faith, that we would maintain our faith through thick and thin, that we would love our brethren, our sisters, Father, of the faith, and continue to spread your word, your good news in the troubling times ahead. Father, may we not lose sight of you in all this, and may we continue to be part of our communities wherever we are at. Father, let us show that we do stand with you. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. God bless you and shalom.